Hi everyone, thank you for being here. I'm Alexander Yevchenko.
I'm Caroline Hoyt. I'm Alyssa Shue. I'm Abby Alishina.
I'm Michael.
Awesome. Yeah, we've had the wonderful opportunity to get to know the community of Rocky Mount just a little bit this past week. And we have one big question on our minds, and it's this. Why doesn't the heart of the city and downtown reflect the heart of the community for downtown? A through line of our interviews highlighted the physical presentation of downtown and its impact on both business and public perception. One individual we interviewed mentioned that the presentation of downtown as it is now conveys that the community of Rocky Mount doesn't care for downtown. But even after our just short 2 days here, we know that this is not true. Every individual that we have interacted with here is incredibly passionate about the revitalization of downtown. But as the same individual stated, the public idea that nothing good happens in Rocky Mount is hard to fight. But we don't think it's impossible. So we want to explore the foundational next steps of how we can change that.
After conducting several interviews with several stakeholders from the Rocky Mount area, one thing that we realized in regards to downtown was that there are many buildings in downtown that are actually owned by people that are no longer residents of Rocky Mount. See, we found out that a lot of people in Rocky Mount actually inherited buildings in downtown by family members, however moved out to similar areas, have moved out to areas again, have moved out to other areas, for example, Raleigh, Durham, Park, and other these buildings. So that's led to an instance of us seeing really bustling and busy restaurants and buildings such as Boston the Girl or Those and Bees, whereas in the surrounding areas there are multiple buildings that have been apparently down, windows boarded up, broken down, next to restaurants that actually get customers. So that's led to what we believe, and we believe that's kind of led to a part of the negative public perception that we see in the downtown area, because it detracts from the overall appearance that customers see. So customers are looking for an experience where they can come see a nice restaurant, see a place to go to, then the surrounding area that's so many shops that they never ran, kind of detracts from the aesthetic experience. We want to give potential business owners the availability to these buildings so that they're able to put their ideas into action and to revitalize and bring life back into the downtown Rocky Mount area.
So that gave way to our next question. How can we incentivize this restoration of these downtown buildings? So our group coined what we called Invest or Divest, where through stakeholders lobbying the city for support, that we can set deadlines for buildings to be brought to code by a certain date. And if they're not brought to code, then ownership can be relinquished to the city and then further restored for availability to further business or new business owners. And we believe this is twofold in that it will attract attention to the current businesses in downtown as well as encourage growing business owners to fund their or house their enterprises in downtown.
So what we envision for the future of downtown Rocky Mount, and I apologize, I drew this in like an hour and a half, so it's a little rushed.
Very good.
I'm impressed.
But we envision a city that is vibrant and bustling, what you picture when you think about downtown. And so the way that we see this happening is through the creation of third spaces. You can see a coffee shop in the corner, a pet store down the street, and green spaces. And the importance of these things cannot be understated. Third spaces provide a place for people to come and build the sense of community that Rocky Mount so prides itself on. And so with these things added to the city, there's a lot of potential, but in order for this to happen and for people to feel safe coming to these third spaces and visiting the city, we first need to bring the surrounding buildings up to code and get everything on a level starting ground.
Right, and as Alyssa mentioned, you either need the entire city to be developed or develop nothing at all. It's very difficult to have boarded up buildings beside you as you're trying to run a business, because think about how that is perceived by your customers. It doesn't look very good. And even walking down the street, we saw the Maryland-style seafood restaurant, and everywhere else, it's just kind of boarded up. As a customer, I don't know if I'm particularly involved or if I'm going to go to that restaurant. And so through pursuing this policy of opening up these areas for entrepreneurs, investors coming in, building their own business, we are revitalizing downtown, but we're also giving them the opportunity to develop local entrepreneurs, whether that's through local workshops, whether that's through the grants that were mentioned by some of the other groups beforehand, whether that's through just even mentorship with people who have been successful with businesses in Rocky Mount. We think that there's a lot of opportunity to be unlocked here, and that all really starts by enforcing the city code and making sure that our owners of these buildings actually either care or sell them. And that's the only real way that will make a change. And so we're very invested in this opportunity. If you'd like to take a picture of the slide, you can reach us at any time, and we'd like to continue on this project with you all, and we appreciate you and the opportunity that you've given us to be here and work on this problem. Thank you.
Oh, well, I guess you just called out city council. Tell us to do our job in policy, which we are very heavily involved, right, Tom?
I was going to say that comment, Councilman Knight. Thank you for beating me to the punch.
Encouraging us to do what sometimes it's hard to do. You really dissect the major problem. You have a lot of absentee landlords, and so they don't have the thrive and the motivation to redevelop business, so that it sit there and become dilapidated. Over the years, we have had campaigns like take the boards off the windows, created facade grants, a DBAP, roof grants, and all that type of funding for downtown businesses. But the main thing you said, absentee landlord. Also, like what you stated too, is to, I can't even read my, mentorship for those who have been successful. You know, Prime Smokehouse were located downtown, but now they're at the mill. They expanded in the beautiful mill looking across at the Tar River, but they actually started in downtown, not too far from the event center, and it had become a destination place for people traveling off I-95 who actually come just for the Prime Smokehouse, smoke pit, barbecue and food. And so, you know, food and art brings people to your city. And green space. You didn't see a lot of green space, but one of the things that we're working on is the train depot, which it was about $600,000. We already did maybe $200,000. But the green space around the railway, and green space also bring people to your downtown. And so I think you looked at the problem, you dissected, and then you brought solutions to help, especially city council and chamber, to do some of the hard things that sometimes we don't want to do for our policy, which we do have. And so I appreciate the encouragement. So I don't feel bad about some decisions that we just made 2 days ago, which we are moving in that direction. So I thank you for taking that hard bullet and bringing it to us, and you weren't afraid to state what the problem really is. Thank you.
Well, I greatly appreciate it. As Councilman Knight, the old saying, you hit the nail on the head, you hit the nail on the head. If there is some way y'all know of a magic solution of how we can engage our absentee owners to really seriously look at either fixing up their building or somehow working an arrangement where it can be sold, but not sold at an astronomical price, but at a price that's realistic. But we know in some instances, people think their building is ceiling high in price when it's not. But I grew up, as I said, 50 miles from here. You wouldn't believe how I loved to come to Rocky Mount as a child. Of course, went through Rocky Mount on my way to Chapel Hill. And downtown was bustling, and I would love to see that kind of activity before I go to another place. And thank y'all so much for really identifying a big problem we have.
You know, this was a most impressive presentation, and it started with, you did your research on one of our biggest problems, and that's absentee ownership of so many of our buildings downtown. We have, from a historical perspective, some really beautiful architectural designs in those buildings. I grew up in Wilson, as I said earlier. I loved to come over Rocky Mount. I loved to go downtown, and when we had a business downtown, dealership before it moved, you would ride around blocks waiting for a parking place to open up. And oftentimes, if I was going to the bank, I'd end up parking in the bus parking place. Get a ticket every now and then, but it's what it was. Code enforcement, I think, is something we have lacked, probably for a variety of reasons. Some, it's been very difficult to find who the owners actually are and trace it. From a generational standpoint, we had one that was in South America. Well, frankly, they don't give a flying fig about these buildings. And possibly enforcing the code where they either have to fix it or donate it for tax write-off to bring it up to code, or either the city and their attorneys are able to foreclose on the property for back taxes and things like that. But anyway, great presentation, wonderful ideas, and congratulations on a good job.